Because if we rely on government to tell us everything,
Yeah.
that will not happen. Why? Because we live in a racist world where at first you had colonialism and slavery, which was designed by one race, privileged itself at the expense of another. And therefore, when slavery came to an end, it became necessary for them to replace us as slaves because they were preparing for a global economy, right?
Was it one race which you?
They actually targeted and almost obliterated one race. Yes, they almost killed the Indian nation in North America. But with us Africans, it seems that it was a vendetta. And the vendetta was not to kill us all, but to subjugate us until we become the poorest of all nations on earth, under their full control. The reasons for that vary. Some people say that black people have the means to control nature through their consciousness because they have lots of melanin. And therefore the awakening of the black nation would mean that the transformation of the human body. And so the white nation which lacks melanin tries to prevent black people from gaining dominion and independence, whereby they may rediscover the truth about themselves. And so it became necessary to oppress the black nation, to keep us busy with jobs, schools, and all of that. And therefore, if we focus only on mainstream institutions and media and governments to tell us what's wrong, what needs to happen, we'll never really see the lives we want to live. Because we have to hold the governments accountable. The governments are just the people whom we elect to serve us. They should get their commands from us as to what we want, depending on what we know. But if we know nothing about ignorant society, that means that they will do as they please. Because we don't seem to know what is right for us. Take for instance the issue of, as we were talking about earlier on, automation. Back in the days, there used to be slaves working the plantations, and later on they took out the slaves and they came and work. And now they realize that they can create computers or machinery that can replace people from doing jobs, so they can make profits without having to pay so much people, having to deal with the benefits that come with being a worker and all of that. But what we fail to notice as the society is that these automations are not helping us. They are helping the businesses which are already there, as well as the governments who are getting tax investments or tax revenues as well as investments from these companies. And so all in all, these governments do not end up serving us. They serve those companies or businesses which have the means to fund them. And so if we as the people do not educate ourselves, for instance, on matters concerning hemp, because hemp is what you all know as ganja or dagga. It has many positive uses, such as making clothing, houses. Actually, if you can legalize hemp, you actually end poverty and inequality, which was one of the reasons why it became illegal in the first place. Because you couldn't enslave and colonize Africans and later on allow them to use hemp and give them an education, because that would undermine everything you did before. Then apart from hemp, there are simply many other things we need to educate ourselves on, such as how society is run, how Western or mainstream media brainwashes societies into believing in the culture of popularity and hegemony and so forth. So I believe it's upon us to educate ourselves as to how other countries operate. What else do we need to know as the people in order to hold our governments accountable?
So do we need governments?
Yes, we always need governments, because a government begins with just you as an individual. Govern means to control. The word govern come from the word govern, which means control, and ment means mind. So the word government means mind control. So if you are not your own government, in other words, you don't learn to control your own mind, someone else will. It's like the old saying that says that if you do not run your own life, someone will run your life, or will treat you to run their life or to serve them, something like that. But the moral of the story is that government begins with an individual, then goes on to a family, between a man, a woman, and his child. And then this becomes what you call a community. And then a collection of communities will create a society which will need to be governed, because we have the natural resources to deal with. We have our own behaviors to deal with, our own petty issues such as crimes, land divisions, resource divisions, and so forth, and distribution of wealth, and so forth. So all of this needs government. But what we are naive at is to assume that the notion of human control of government is Western, that we must use the Western standard of government, which has never helped anyone, not even the Westerners. The Westerners use violence and deceit to get to where they are. They never used intellect or ingenuity. What we can do as the African race and other races to learn the ingenuity they have already mastered, such as technologies and many other things, as to how can we do these things. But on top of that, we need to figure out what resources are most suitable for us to do these things. For instance, much of the time they use dangerous chemicals. So in our case, we could use hemp, we could almost manufacture anything. And hemp is natural, we can grow it almost everywhere. We can even use it for food. It can help us cure many illnesses and diseases. But the problem with our society is that we have an ignorant society which relies on the government giving them education, to give them entertainment on TVs. It's like what Bob Marley said, everything we know is what they tell us. And we're so ignorant that we expect, that they can always reach us through political strategy. So which means that what we need to do as the people is to work out ways that could be beneficial for us. Either sidelining the governments in implementing these changes, or manipulating the government to say, look, you're now running out of time. You are becoming obsolete as well as irrelevant, because now we know far more better than we think we do. And we expect you to do this and this and this for us. And if you are failing to give us proper land, for instance, take a look at the issue of townships in South Africa. They are forever brainwashing us into loving these townships, calling them ikas, ikaslam, ikas, our stories, all of that type of nonsense. The truth of the matter is that townships are an apartheid legacy. They were designed to put blacks far away from resources, far away from the cities. And today we have problems like when we have strikes, for instance, with your buses, taxis, and trains, or price increase on petrol. Whom does it affect the most? The people in the townships, because we do not have fertile land in the townships. Develop ourselves to build the houses we like to build. For instance, we get loam soil or better soil. We'll even dig out the soil, make our own bricks, which we could even sell and build as much houses, bigger houses as we want. Suppose someone wants to start a gym. How can you do that in the township? Because you don't have enough space. You are an artist, you want to paint your canvases. You don't have enough space. Whatever career you want like to follow in the townships, you are limited by your environment. Because everywhere you look, it doesn't seem like anyone is doing it. Suppose you have a dream of becoming a millionaire, you have an idea. Who do you share it with? Because everyone will laugh at you, because there are no millionaires in the townships. So the township is a standard, you understand me, which says this is your limit. It's not even a glass ceiling, it's a steel ceiling that says you as an African will end here. 8 houses is too much for you. You must settle for that. And you won't even buy it cash. You understand? You will slave for the rest of your life and retire at 65, still paying for your bond for your house. Buying new furniture, buying food again. In other words, with all your life's worth of hard work, you'll never be able to do anything that will live for your children or anything substantial.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there are not enough factories in the townships. So we always have to move from the townships to the cities for work.
Okay. My question is,
how can technology improve our lives instead of deteriorating our conditions?
Yes.
Okay, press record.
Yeah.
Okay. The truth of the matter is that technology is not a bad thing, because it has made our lives easy. And on top of that, technology is an invention of the mind, which means that it's just a reflection of human intelligence. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But in a world whereby there are sinister motives in almost everything that's done, everything that's available to us needs to be examined.
Yeah.
For instance, technology has positive as well as good elements. Not on its own. The positive elements are due to our positive nature, and the bad elements are due to our evil nature. It's like guns do not shoot people. People use guns to kill people. So the beauty of technology is that we can mimic everything we see in nature and copy even the ingenuity and use the education that the Westerners gave us, such as they did in Asia, the so-called Asian tigers, and create our own technologies that will free us from labor completely. But there are steps to that process. The first step is the one of where we need to demand fertile land, and as well as demand the industrialization of hemp. With enough land and food, because when we have enough land, we'll plant our own food.
Yeah.
Once you have a healthy nation, then we have a happy and an intelligent nation, free nation. Then we can work out what resources we can create out of hemp, because the resource will be all around. What will be left will be ingenuity and the technology is already there. So education now will be the bridge between the resource as well as the technology. So education will be the ingenuity to bridge the two in order to create the abundance that we need. And once you have an abundance, you don't have high prices, because high prices go up with scarcity. In a capitalist world, everything is made to be scarce so that they can charge a higher price. And on top of that, if it's quality, it's expensive. But if everything we use, or much of everything we use, is made up of hemp, and this hemp is easily available, it's of the same quality, then it pushes the prices down. And on top of that, we as the people need to demand from governments to create national banks or government banks which do not charge an interest, because when a bank charges an interest, it's actually enslaving the public or society. So governments owe us a big deal by creating these banks, and make sure that they do not charge a single cent for the money which you have borrowed, because the governments are making enough money out of us anyways. So as time goes and we are starting to learn more ingenuity, we can eradicate ourselves from the workplace and remove and replace ourselves with technologies without deteriorating our living standards, because every technology that you are seeing out there is improving our lives, even though there are certain elements whereby technology take out people from work and do not provide anything as a compensation. So I think what matters the most here is the execution. How do you execute our plans as society? Using our experiences of the past, our current conditions of the present, where we have one race dominant over another, and one almost living under dire circumstances. Because we have people in Africa who are living below the supposedly poverty line. And you may wonder who also creates this poverty line, who decides who is poor and who is wealthy, because they are not wealthy enough also. In fact, they are not even wealthy, those who assume to be wealthy, because wealth, I believe, is mental health. And in a world like this, no one really can claim to be mentally healthy, because this is a jungle, a concrete jungle.
So it means that the majority is poor.
The majority of the people are poor, psychologically poor, but they have materials which camouflage this mental illness which they know they have. And so they take the cars they have, the big houses they have, and they use us as a front, because they have insecurities deep down within themselves. They don't know who they are, where they are, and why they are in this life, and what will happen after they leave.
But the truth is they are poor.
The truth is they are mentally poor, in other words, spiritually poor. So all the material they have is to hide the pain deep inside themselves. So the truth of the matter is that they need to just come out of the closet. We know they are worthless, no boys just like us. We need to come together as the human race and work out our differences, because all we want, all of us, is happiness as well as means to get by from day to day. You understand? No one wants excessive wealth or excessive fame for no good reason. For instance, we have a tendency of giving too much attention to worthless people who just want to be famous for no good reason. They have no serious contribution to society, as well as politicians and who do not necessarily play a positive value in our lives. They are simply upholding the old norms and standards, where there are no real changes. Take, for instance, the education system. Ever since white people have interacted with us in the past 20 years or 200 years or so, they provided us with their education. We came from the Catholic Church. But how many black people have gained an education ever since? And what are the conditions of this world today? Africa in particular. Nothing has changed. What they do with their false education, they give you a notion of false security, whereby they teach you to compete instead of cooperate with others in order to create a society which will be conducive for you and your children. So they teach you to compete with your fellow men for a job. All you do with your brainwash education is to perform a certain task to earn a living. In other words, you are just a slave who has to house and feed himself and come to the plantation the next day and perform a job with a qualification. So there are no chains around your neck these days. You just have a tie to come to the plantation and do your job, with a very backward mentality, far more backward than your ancestors had during the times of slavery, because back then at least they knew that they were slaves. And nowadays we don't know that, and so we are more lenient and as well as oblivious into supporting this corrupt system, and we think that these governments are actually serving us, which is not the case.
Okay, all right.
The reason why white people call us slaves is because they have an agenda. They've created this world. It's a white man's world. They didn't even use their women. This is why we have domestic problems with women being abused. We have all of this gender tension. It is a byproduct of how this world was planned. It was planned by white men because he knew that if he involved his wife was going to sort of like be sensitive towards some of his ideals as well as his actions towards other human beings. So this is a white man's world which they have created, and they also have another world which they have envisioned, and their governments are working to achieve. It's called the New World Order.
Now, why do they call us slaves?
I'm going right there. My point is that they always had a racial agenda ever since the days of Nebuchadnezzar, as well as the likes of Alexander, Hitler, Napoleon. So they always have a racial agenda of impoverishing us and enriching themselves. The problem with us Africans is that with all our so-called leaders, they don't ever come up with a racial agenda to say, okay, fine, we are these people. We have been hurt because of these reasons. We are here today because we've been treated this way. But since we have this little notion of freedom, here's what we can do to create our own racial agenda, to free ourselves from being manipulated and oppressed. So here we have a black race which is being headed by white people who work for them, they don't work for us. They decide what is good for us.
So the black man doesn't know where he is going.
He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't even know who he is, where he comes from, and where he is. So how can he know where he's going? The world we live in was designed by white people. Take for instance money. So many black people think that working for money is something which we should applaud. In truth, one should work for a better society, to empower other people with knowledge and information, to be a good person. Money is something physical which was created by intelligence. So someone intelligent created money to control people who are less intelligent. So for us to be truly intelligent is to bypass that trick and create a world whereby we may not use money, where we may use character as well as knowledge as a commodity to bypass money or barter. And then we can use resources such as hemp, gold, all natural resources that are available to us, because Africa is rich in terms of natural resources. We can actually influence the world. It's exactly what, similar to what Muammar Gaddafi was saying, that if we can have our own central bank backed by our own mineral resources, we can either bankrupt Europe or end up having Europe and America being third economies to Africa. So as black people, we don't have an agenda. This is why we are slaves to white people. We go to their schools. We believe in their religions. We do everything they tell us. They don't respect us. They don't like us because we don't respect or like ourselves. Therefore, we are slaves, because a slave is an employee or someone who just follows someone else's agenda.
He has got no say.
He has no say, of course. He has no rights, because his life is not his own. His life is to be used to help the master achieve what he needs to achieve. For instance, you may lose.
He doesn't even have the right to live. That's a slave.
A slave doesn't have a right to live, but look at the quality of our lives in Africa. It's way too bad. It's way too bad, bro. I might be saying Africa, but it's everywhere. In America, they have a new saying now where they say Black Lives Matter, which means they started to realize that their lives do not matter, which was already the case. Our lives have never mattered to anyone but to us. So it's upon us to stop depending on one race that continues to destroy us and create our own world. Okay. Then we can stop being slaves. Okay, you want to know if we have leaders in Africa or not? The truth of the matter is that we don't. Our so-called leaders, like I said, are educated by Westerners to propel the Western agenda. So there's this saying that leadership is not about title or position, it's about results. How long have we had these so-called leaders? For more than 50 years now. But what are the results? Same old situation if it has not deteriorated. So a real leader or a good leader is someone who multiplies himself by creating many other leaders, so that ultimately there are no leaders and there are no followers. But a society which is made up of single-minded people with the same goal, same ability, as well as giving the same opportunity to everyone else, working the land as well as cultivating their own mind to creating the world they want to live in. So the problem here in Africa is that we have politics, and politics
they brings judgment upon you.
Yes, they bring judgment upon you, and apart from that, politics are not independent. So politics can never give us freedom. Politicians are dependent on business. So politics are manipulated and controlled by the men behind the scenes. And therefore, the real people who run our countries, we don't know them, we don't see them, because they are the ones who influence politicians. So the so-called leader is just a puppet who is there playing the role of a mediator between the society, which he will rip off in terms of resources, as well as the clientele as well as labor. For the benefit of these businesses will come as investors. For instance, the so-called leaders always talk about, we don't have to upset the investors, but they always upset us, the people. They have us living in shacks, living in townships, earning minimum wages, because their only and main interest is to keep those investors coming in so they can get the bribe, and those investors can enrich themselves, exploiting us as well as taking our resources and plunging our continent. So we have never had rich leaders. Besides, life is not political. Nothing in nature is political. Life is intellectual or psychological. It is all a spirit. Therefore, leadership begins with realizing who you are as a human being. There's no such thing as a leader being someone who doesn't recognize the existence of God and the role of God in human society. Because how do you lead people who are spiritual when you are not even spiritual yourself? Which means you deceive them, because their priorities become non-issues to you. On top of that, how do you lead people who are concerned about their racial identity, take pride in themselves, when you are way too westernized? It means the same thing again, that you deceive them, because their agenda is not important to you. Your main agenda is to sit in that position and be bribed as usual. So we don't have leaders here. You want to know why does it take for our leaders to do anything substantial for us?
Yeah.
The reasons are plain and simple, is because these are people who are not leaders. These are westernized people who went to a westernized form of indoctrination called school. They've been there for more than 12 years. So if you will do your research, you will realize that, or you will understand that schools are run in the same manner as prisons. So after more than 12 years of indoctrination, these people come up to serve the agenda of the elite who come and invest in our countries. And in return, they will tell us what is right and what is not, what to do and what not to do. Go back to the name, the word government, which means mind control. So their role is to control us, to manipulate us, to make us scared. Watch your news. Everything you see on the news channel is usually negative, designed to create fear upon you. So when you feel scared, you feel helpless, you need a savior, some kind of someone who has all the power. That's where the government comes in with their own manipulation. Because they're the ones who generate those negative news in the first place, or those negative vibrations in society, so they can come up as these false messiahs. So in truth, all these so-called leaders do is to make us doubt ourselves into thinking that they are useful and relevant, while in truth they are the ones who have always been irrelevant. They don't run anything here. All they do is they enrich themselves as well as those businesses who come to invest here. But it's all done at our own expense. Why? Because we don't have our own, or we don't respect our own knowledge systems. Everything we eat, everything we dress, everything we do is influenced by Westerners. May I even say that a real man could never be fed, let alone by his enemy, or his former enemy or current oppressor. And a real man will have his own law. And the black man's life is determined by the Western law. If you go to court, there's no such thing as an African law there. It's all Western court. So our society is just ran on our behalf. Sorry, it's ran by black leaders who run it on the behalf of the Western world. So we don't have leaders.
Okay. All right. Thank you.